The message tonight is coming in a little bit of a different format that is going to be very much exploring a prophetic journey. And in that prophetic journey, there are also some updates that are both personal updates and updates for the trajectory of the ramp and where we're going as a house all together. So these updates are, just to be honest, a little surprising. They've been sort of surprising to us as the storyline has unfolded. So what we want to do is we want to give you what the update is. We want to give it to you up front, so that way it's not like, wait a minute, where is this going? So we want to go ahead and tell you up front what it is and then share the story with you. Does that sound good? No. So here is the update. The Lord spoke very clearly to me and Delana that we are to spend a season in Manchester, England, in order to prepare both personally and as a part of the ramp for the next phase of the global assignment that's coming. And that's not an easy update to share. Not because we don't love Manchester, we do deeply, 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 but because of how much we love Hamilton and how much we love Ramp Church. The good news is that though our role is shifting here at the ramp, we're not shifting from the ramp. We're going as a part of the ramp team, and Hamilton is home for us and always will be, and that's very clear in our prophetic history. So I use the word season very intentionally regarding Manchester because the Lord spoke to us about being a 1 to 2 year season where we would go, and what are we going to be doing? I'm getting ahead of myself. There's a whole story connected to it. So is that all right if we take a few moments and tell the story? Does that sound good? All right. I've got my phone here because Delana told me this afternoon. She said, you know, there's a lot of times when we tell the story, you forget a few details, or you get ahead of yourself and you kind of jump around and people get confused on the timeline. I'm like, you're right.
Yes, it's true. We jump from place to place and then I start getting confused as well.
Yes, and we're like, wait a minute, what year are we in? What month are we in? Which dream are we in? Was that yours or somebody else's? Yeah. So there's a lot of details to share. So we want to unpack this because, as I said a moment ago, this is not just a personal update. This is really a ministry update. And what we're about to share is connected to the next phase of the ramp's global assignment and the 111 word that he's given us. And so that promise has been repetitive and coming up over and over again. So let's give you some of the details. So I'll give you a short version of this. So the short version starts in May of 2019. So you're like, that's the short version? Yes, that's the short version. Starts back in May of 2019. So in May of 2019, we really felt the Lord expanding our hearts regarding a global assignment, both personally and the ramp's global assignment. And we had gone on a trip, and when we came back, we met with Miss Karen on our back deck there at her house and said, Miss Karen, what is this? What is this global assignment we all sense that includes Israel, but it's not just Israel, it's nations, but it's America. What is this? And you know, we feel very much called to the role that we're in, but how does all of this work together in terms of doing what we're doing and expanding globally? And so none of us had answers that day, sitting on their back deck. It was just an agreed, yes, we all sense this witness of the Spirit that a global assignment for the ramp, and then our leadership team's part of that global assignment. It's clear. But what does it mean? What does it look like? We don't have language or details or strategy. So that was a seed, that conversation that God really implanted into our hearts. So just like all of the work of God, that seed he continued to water and he continued to increase for months and years to come. So I'll fast forward then from May of 2019 to September of 2019. In September of 2019, I had a weekend where I had two just vivid God encounter type dreams. They weren't the kind of dreams that I remembered eventually over time and throughout my day. Oh, I thought I had a dream. It's, those, we talk about those often. Those wake you up at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. in that range type dream. I had one on a Saturday morning, then a Sunday morning. Boom, boom, back to back, 2 nights in a row. And they seemed to speak in different directions, so it was a little odd to me. The first one that I had, a prophetic voice, prophetic minister by the name of Patricia King, comes to me in the dream. She calls me and begins to prophesy over me. And without going into all the details, it was clear the Lord was speaking about a relationship with Israel. And that was very, very clear in the dream. So I get up, and I'm up for hours before the rest of the family, journaling, praying. God, this is so clear. This is, surprising to me. Boom, the next night I have a dream. And in that dream, I know in the dream through a conversation with Miss Karen, our whole family were supposed to go to Manchester for 1 to 2 years. I know that very clearly. But I wake up and I journal, I'm like, this doesn't make sense at all. This must be a metaphor. Dream language is tricky. How much is specific? How much is literal? How much is, dream language? It's just like prophetic language in the Bible. It's very interesting, the interpretation, especially the application of it. So a couple of weeks later, Pastor Andy Elms happened to be in town from Portsmouth, England. And so we do what we normally do. We went to Huddle House. And so we're hanging out at Huddle House at breakfast. And I go, Pastor Andy, I had these crazy dreams. So I'm telling these 2 dreams. I told Miss Karen, told Pastor Josh. And I was like, I had these crazy dreams. And so he looks at me. If you know Pastor Andy, sometimes when he gets real serious, he puts his glasses down. He puts them down. He goes, here's what I think the dreams mean. And he grabs a salt shaker, pepper shaker, and then the little sweet and low holder thing. And he puts out 3, boom, boom, boom. He goes, this is right now, this is near future, this is like distant future. I think the dream is saying Hamilton now, Manchester next, Israel later. I think that's what the dreams are saying. And that was so bizarre to me, I didn't even tell anybody else that he said that. Because I was like, well, good.
Except for me.
Except for Delana, yeah. It was like, well, Pastor Andy can't get it right every time, It was like, well, Pastor Andy, thank you for that interpretation, kind of thing. I love you, Pastor Andy, if you ever watch this. I honor your voice. So anyway, but it was just kind of like, that is so out of left field. I don't think that's it. So fast forward then, so that's 2019. Fast forward to June of last year, June 2021. And in June, all I know how to describe is that seed of a global assignment began to really break through the soil in ways that we really couldn't even find language for. It was just, Lord, this is bizarre. Hamilton's home, Ramp Church, we know is our assignment. What does this mean? Because we feel the winds of change, but nothing in us feels that kind of change, like a transition out of the ramp. I mean, we're called a lifelong covenant relationship with Miss Karen, Mr. Rick, the ramp. That's not even in our radar. So, Lord, what does this mean? So as we begin to process that, we begin to lean in more specifically in prayer and fasting. And the Lord began to speak, not specifically, but he began to speak in a lot of different areas and confirm to us, no, something is coming, keep leaning in. Keep leaning in, something is coming. So June, July, August, September, that may not sound like a long time, but when you're living the everydays, it's like, Lord, would you speak clearly? And he did highlight different things about our assignment. And then the Israel component began to get very, very loud, especially like August and September. And I won't go into all the ways God spoke about that, but the Israel component began to become whoa, super loud, overwhelming. So we were like, God, what does that mean? What does that look like? What are you asking us to do? That was our question. Because our whole life, the framework of our entire life, as it is yours, is built on obedience, nothing else. It's obedience. And so it's like, Lord, what are you asking us to do? And so as we're going through this process, we get to October of 2021. When we get to October, Lana Vosser releases a prophetic word. And in the word, she said, this week, she said, many of you are asking God what all these puzzle pieces mean. But this week, God's going to bring them together and show you the complete picture.
Which was a big deal because we had been using that specific verbiage about what we were asking the Lord for. I mean, we had just been talking about, Lord, I feel like we have all these puzzle pieces all over the table. And, sometimes you see a little bit of, we've got part of it put together over here, we have part over here. Some of them I can see how they fit together, but I still can't see a clear image from this whole thing. And so for her to use that specific language, it felt like a direct word to us.
Yes. Very, very
Gave
specific.
us faith and expectation for the Lord to do that.
And even that's an example of how the Lord was speaking to us in that window from June to October over and over again, prophetic language would come to us that was quoting our private, personal conversations just like that. So we were like, all right, the Lord's going to speak to us this week. We're beginning to really exercise faith on that prophetic word. Well, that week we're going to minister in Ohio at Kristen and Micaiah's church. So we're like, hey, okay, it's a different environment. Maybe they'll just create an opportunity for some kind of word or clarity from the Lord. So we go and we do get a couple of prophetic words from the pastors there, and they were rich, they're very good, but they were more like puzzle pieces. They weren't the complete picture. So we go throughout the week, we get to the end of that week, and we're just like devastated. Because it's like,
we had so much faith for that. Like I was like, this is the word of the Lord. He is going to speak to us this week. You know, we've waited, we've fasted, we've prayed. What else are we supposed to do? And so it's like, surely this is the week he's going to give us a word. And it was just more questions. And we were confused. And to be honest, I was getting a little frustrated. Do you guys ever get frustrated when the Lord doesn't answer you? I was frustrated because I was like, God, what else are you asking of me? What are you wanting? And so we were kind of at that exasperated place where it's like, Lord, I don't know how we can go any further. I don't know what else you're expecting of us, because we had come back and there was no clarity whatsoever. So,
and our agitation was not with a frustration with where we are, what we're doing.
No.
It was just a, Lord, you're clearly saying something, but you've not made it clear what this something is. And so we want to simply obey what you're telling us to do. So, make that clear. So we go through that whole week. It was just a frustrating experience to exercise that faith and to not get the clarity. But in just a couple of days, that clarity did come. So the way it began is the next day, it was a Monday, we're on a Zoom call with Joe and Stacy Reeser. And we regularly stay connected. Obviously, they're pastoring our Ramp Church in Manchester. We're pastoring a Ramp Church in Hamilton. So, there's quite a bit of conversation back and forth. And we've done that for the last, 5 years, ever since we've been pastoring Hamilton. We've stayed in contact in that way. So anyway, we were just processing that journey with them. We said, guys, just to be honest, we're disappointed because we've not gotten the clarity that we were expecting this past week. So Joe speaks up, and if you know Joe, he's just being silly Joe Reeser Joe. He goes, I got it. You guys just need to move to Manchester. Well, he says that every 3 months. We're like, okay, Joe, yeah. It's never been a serious thought. It's just been a brush it off, Joe's being funny Joe. Just like anytime you tell Joe that you're having a baby, then his immediate response is if it's a boy, then he's like, Michael Joseph, and then he'll say your last name. Or if it's a girl, Michaela Josephine, and he'll say your last name. It's like he just has these token things he does. So that's what he's doing. Oh, you guys are going to move to Manchester. I'm like, ha, ha, ha. And he goes, no, seriously, you need to move to Manchester, and you're going to help us raise up a culture of prayer, and it's Manchester that will send you to Israel. And when you come here, it's going to prepare you for your global assignment, and it's going to make you ready for the next step. So when he says that, we're sitting there like...
No, it was weird. It was like one of those, like, it starts out funny, and then something shifts, and it's like, wait a second, are you prophesying to us right now? Have you guys ever experienced that before? And it's like, whoa, we all stopped. It was like kind of quiet, and we're like...
Like, it was so bizarre.
Did that just happen?
Stacy went, what? You're being serious? Like that, like kind of flabbergasted. Joe, what are you doing? And even Joe, when he got done, his face was kind of like... what did I just do? And we're all like, that was interesting. Well, right after it happened, Delana just goes, oh, what? I just remember I had a dream last night. And in the dream she had the night before, she didn't remember until that moment, is that she was pregnant and she had 24 hours to give birth. And so it was like, Lord, do you want to, I don't know what Joe's just talking about, but do you want to say something in this 24-hour period? So we get off the Zoom call, and the only way I would describe it is my spirit man felt charged. Like I couldn't stop praying in the spirit the rest of the day, and I was like, Lord, what is going on? I feel like I'm like, most of the time when you fast, you're like, ooh, my body and my head is hurting, this is terrible. Every now and then you hit a window where you're like, man, my spirit man feels strong. It felt like that. I was like, I feel like I'm like good style fasting, but I'm not fasting. I'm not sure what's going on. It just feels like my spirit man is strong. So anyway, as I'm going throughout the day, I'm like, Lord, you can't be saying this. Manchester, you can't be saying this. It doesn't make sense. They have leaders. They don't need us. We're pastoring in Hamilton. It doesn't make sense. And I thought, well, I think Shiloh Bridges did give me a word last year about Manchester. What was that? I couldn't remember. I knew I could find it in my journals, but I'm like, it's going to take forever to find. I'm going to email Shiloh. So I email Shiloh, and I say, hey, Shiloh, didn't you have like a dream or a word sometime last year about Manchester? If so, do you remember it? Could you send it to me? Okay, so I go throughout the rest of the day. I don't hear from Shiloh. The next morning, Tuesday, October the 12th. I know that date because it was the RSM worship recording thing in the courtyard. And somebody was wearing the shirt last night, Kadar or somebody. So anyway, so on Tuesday, October the 12th, I'm awakened at 4:30 a.m. with 2 back-to-back God encounter dreams. Like undeniable, God just showed up and spoke. And I don't know what they mean initially. So I have sort of these 3 stages of God encounters that Tuesday morning. The first one, so 2-part dream and then something else after the dream. So I'll tell you that. So in the first part of the dream, I am at a Reese House prayer night at RSM, and Pastor Josh Hollingsworth is on the platform, and I'm up beside him, and we kind of keep bumping into each other because there's so many people around. And I know as I'm bumping into him, what's on him, like this watchman, intercessor, Reese House, like what's on him, what he's leading, what he's doing, it needs to get on me even more. Like I need to receive from what he's carrying. And so I'm like, I need to get on me what's on him in this vein of prayer. And then I think I wake up, and I'm aware it's about 4:30 a.m. So I think I'm awake, but it's actually still in a dream. And so in the second part, I think I'm awake, and I'm looking around, and for some reason, I'm fully thinking I'm in my bedroom, but it's a barn. And I look over, and Pastor Josh walks up, and I'm thinking to myself, it's really bizarre that he's in my bedroom at 4:30 a.m. Like, what is he doing in my room? But I wouldn't put past Pastor Josh. I mean, he would do something like that. But I'm like, what is he doing in my bedroom? And I know he's telling me, get up and be a watchman right now. God has something to say. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm really sleepy. I don't want to get up. Josh, can you just tell me what the word is? Okay, I know it's terrible. It's just what I was thinking. But he's just standing there like this going, doing his Pastor Josh thing. And I'm like, what is the word? So finally, as though this is the word, he pulls this nacho cheese dispenser to himself, like in a concession stand, pulls out a plastic tray and just goes like this, and he's just holding the nacho cheese like this, looking at me, as though this is the sign, this is the word. And I'm almost getting frustrated. I'm like, Josh, stop being so cryptic. Like, what is the word? And so finally, he just looks at me, and he lifts his hand with the nacho cheese in his left hand, and he goes, watch with the cheese and the wine, like that. And in my mind's eye, now I don't see the barn and the nacho cheese anymore. I see like a very refined European cheese and wine setup, almost like European style, like, something very fancy. And so that's why I see my mind's eye, and then I wake up. And so I wake up, I'm like, whoa, that like undeniable God stuff. But I have no idea what this means, but I'm very vivid, I'm very awake, this is the Lord. So I go into my living room, and I just spend a while just journaling the whole thing. I write the whole thing down. By the time I wrap up, it's about between 5 and 5:30 a.m. And I'm just hanging with the Lord. I'm like, Lord, you told me to be a watchman. You told me to get up. There's nacho cheese. There's the cheese and the wine. What do you want me to do with that? Like, what are you saying? So I'm just hanging out like, all right, if you don't want to say anything, that's fine, but I'm here. And so anyway, so all of a sudden it hits me, oh, I wonder if Shiloh ever emailed me last night. So I pull out my phone, because I had emailed Shiloh, what was those words about Manchester? And she had emailed me. And usually I just kind of summarize it, but since we're in this environment, is it cool if I read it? Yes. So Shiloh emails me, and she had 2 things. She said, yes, I do remember those words. The first one was a dream. The second one was a prophetic word I heard over at you and Delana in June of 2020. And so first, here's the dream. I had a dream that Pastor Micah was on stage preaching and says, Ramp Manchester has changed all of us. We are all changed because of Ramp Manchester. It was like we as a corporate body went to Ramp Manchester and were forever changed by the deep work it did in us. We all came back completely different, being deeply marked by the Lord. Pastor Micah then begins to preach with authority in a brand new way. His voice sounded so different. He was preaching with a new fire and new authority. The power of the Holy Spirit hits the room. He says that this is the second time something like this has ever happened to him. Although I knew we were at the ramp, the place looked completely different. The stage was so big, it was like we were holding a service in a different location, but it was still Ramp Church. The stage was bigger, and it was hardwood and light brown, and it was rounded. So I read that, I'm like, whoa, okay, Ramp Manchester, it's changed all of us. We go for a season. Lord, and I'm still thinking to myself, like, Lord, you're not saying that. You're not saying Manchester. Because again, I'm thinking like, Lord, this is Laura's word. Like, we already knew about Laura. She heard, I was like, Lord, this is other people's word. This is not our word. You know, I'm going through that. And then I read the second part of the email. And when I read it, I literally gasped out loud like that, and I doubled over and began to weep because the Lord shows up. And again, we're sharing some of the prophetic details, but deeper than even details is the inward witness of the Holy Spirit. That's the thing, because God has said a lot of stuff in a lot of dreams to us in a lot of different directions, but what you pay attention to is the inward witness of the Holy Ghost, not just even circumstantial things. And so there was the inward witness that morning that confirmed this is what I'm saying. So part two, she goes, yeah, I'm glad I remember that. This second part, it was a Sunday service during worship. I went back and looked at my journal and found the entry. It's June, I think, 6, 2020, somewhere in there. June 2020. Okay, it was a Sunday service during worship. I remember vividly hearing that you and Delana are supposed to go to Manchester, regardless of what it would look like. In that moment, it seemed like a place for you guys to actually move to. I knew I had to write it down so that I could articulate rightly to you later. But when I wrote it down, I realized I wrote down the word Israel instead of Manchester. I had no idea how it happened because Israel was not present in my mind at that moment. I then had clarity from the Lord that I wrote Israel down because it is Manchester that will take you to Israel. I knew that Manchester was the forerunner of Israel and that you plus Delana would be vital pieces in it. When I read that word and how it quoted verbatim what Joe Reeser had said the day before, that Manchester will send you to Israel, less than 24 hours, that's when I gasped. The Holy Spirit hits me in the gut and I begin to weep. And I remember the words from Pastor Andy, it's Hamilton, then Manchester, then Israel. And I'm gripped by the Lord, and all of a sudden, boo, interpretation for the dream comes. The nacho cheese in the barn. What is that? The cheese and the wine. What is that? It's about being a watchman. The Lord was saying through the nacho cheese in the barn that represents Hamilton. Barn, it's a rural environment, nacho cheese. I can't tell you how many times I've served concession stand for my boys' sports stuff and eaten nacho cheese. The Lord knows my language, why that represents Hamilton. You've been a watchman with the barn and the nacho cheese. Now go be a watchman with the cheese and the wine in England. Go be a watchman in Manchester. This grips me so deeply. I wake Delana up from a dead sleep by 6:30. You know, it's still dark outside. She wakes up to me hovering over her. She's like, what? What's happening? I'm like, hey. I mean, at this point, I've had a couple of hours to process all this. I'm like, hey, I just had some God encounters. Do you want to hear them? She's like, I gotta get the kids ready for school. What are we doing? You know, I was like, I'll wait. You know, it was a very kind of bizarre morning. So later that day, I go to the mill house and I see Shiloh. She's working at the mill house then. And I go, and I'm playing it cool. I'm like, hey, Shiloh. You know, thanks for those words. They were very meaningful to me. And so I just say, you know, no, Shiloh, because she didn't put it in the email. I was like, wasn't there something about being a watchman? You know, and she went, oh, that was it. That's it. She goes, yeah, the Lord spoke to me and said, Micah is a watchman for Manchester, and that's what will send him to Israel. And again, I'm just floored. I'm amazed. So what do we do after that? What do you do after you hear something like that? Of course, we discuss it. We prayed over it. We meet with Miss Karen. The next day, after small group that night, we're like, hey, Miss Karen, God's doing some stuff. You got to come over. So we share the story, and you can imagine Miss Karen's like, this is a lot, guys, you know. No, she's very supportive of saying, this is a lot. I cannot deny that God is speaking. Let's pray over this. So that's what we did. October November, December. We're just praying over it. Lord, what does this mean? What does this look like? What's the timing? It seems so clear that to do anything less would be like Jonah-level disobedience. Like we have to respond in obedience, but what does it look like? What's the timing? And what's the strategy? And what are you saying about all this? Well, I just want to say during those 3 months, October, November, December, to say that the Lord confirmed it is an understatement. The level of confirmation that came through personal dreams through this community, through prophetic words and prophetic moments that nobody had any idea the level of significance, it was massive. Can I give you just one of them? Maybe I'll give you two or three, but I'm just going to start with one. So one Sunday night during that season, Jeremiah Navarro, where are you, Jeremiah? He's, there you are. So Jeremiah Navarro, right over here off the platform, after Sunday night service, I come off the platform and he goes, hey, Pastor Micah. He goes, I heard something kind of weird during pre-service prayer, and I kind of feel weird sharing it with you. He goes, but I feel like I'm supposed to. I think it has something to do with Manchester, and it's something for you as well, but I don't really know how to understand the connection there, but it's something for Manchester and something for you. So I'm immediately like, yeah, go ahead, Jeremiah, And he goes, the Lord told me during prayer to look up the nursery rhyme, London Bridge is falling down. And he goes, so I looked up the nursery rhyme, and he goes, and I feel like the last stanza is for you. Okay, I didn't know there was more than one stanza. And so he gets to the last one, he scrolls down, he goes, here's the last stanza. I feel like this is for you and somehow for Manchester. Send a man to watch all night, watch all night, watch all night. Send a man to watch all night, my fair lady. He just kind of looks at me, and I'm like, man, that's awesome. Thank you, Jeremiah. I received that. Because I'm so, what do I do? What do I go? I can't just unload on them. I'm like, well, Jeremiah, let me tell you how much that confirms. All that to say, never discount anything you're hearing from God. You have no idea how much your obedience plays into somebody else's storyline, okay? So we're stunned. So we get lots of stuff like that. Let me tell you one more dream. So Casey Kendall had a dream over a year ago. In the dream, which Casey still doesn't know this, she's in Israel right now. She has a dream one night. In the dream, she hears a voice speak to her and the voice just says this, remember, it's Manchester first, then Israel. And she goes, well, Lord, what does that mean? And the voice just goes, remember, it's Manchester, then Israel. She's like, oh, okay. And just shares it with us randomly, I don't know what this means. And so we're like, whoa. So there's all kinds of, again, that's just the tip of the iceberg. It goes on and on and on and on. So let me fast forward to January and talk about where we are right now. And then if I'm missing any details, remind me and Miss Karen, and there's stuff here. So I don't know if you can make sense of those notes. So anyway, so in January, so we're just waiting, holding this, waiting. Lord, what does this mean? When we get to January, I'm meeting with Mr. Rick, and it feels as though we shift out of let's wait and see to it's now. Miss Karen heard this word over the year. What I've told you to do it now. Time is of the essence. And we really have this sense of the urgency of obedience that says we don't know all the whys. We don't even know what it all means. When we say Israel, we don't even know what that means. It's not even like our thing is so we'll go to Manchester there, we move to Israel. We don't even know what that means, Israel. We just know there's an assignment in Israel with the ramp. There's prophetic history with us. Many other people in here have prophetic history about Israel. So again, it's not like a clarified, this is what it means, Manchester then Israel. We just know that's part of the story. And so, but we do feel there's an urgency on obedience. That with this word, what I've told you to do now, time is of the essence, and there's some kind of global picture at play through the ramp that the timing and season with the Lord is important for us to stay in rhythm. And so since January, in discussion with Mr. Rick and Miss Karen, we begin to move into active mode, taking the right steps at the right time in order to prepare for this moment. So practically what that looks like for us is that we are currently planning right now, Lord willing, of course, a man plans his way, the Lord directs his steps. Our plan right now is that by the end of the summer, end of July, really beginning of August, to make a move to Manchester and to be there for 1 to 2 years because that's what the Lord told us. After that, we do plan to come back to Hamilton. We don't plan to sell our home here in Hamilton. The Lord has spoken to us very clearly about Hamilton being home base in the midst of our global assignment. In a lot of ways, it's similar to Samuel and Lauren's season in Cleveland, even the time frame, about 18 months there in Cleveland. And so there's a similarity there. And so we see that picture, and really what we feel is that this really is a part of the Deuteronomy 111 call on this house. At some point, multiplication goes out of just the arena of prayer. We never abandon prayer, but it goes from prayer into natural manifestation. I had a dream during this process where I was surrounded by a group of people, and I felt this pressure, Hamilton or Israel, as though I had to choose one and reject the other. And it was actually after the night where in our small group we learned about word of wisdom. And so in the dream I received a word of wisdom. I didn't see who the people were around me. I just knew I felt this pressure. So in response to this, Hamilton or Israel, choose one and reject the other, I just looked at the group of people and I said, 111. And the answer was not one or the other. The answer was multiplication for what God's doing on a global level through this house. So whatever part we're called to play, our answer is yes to the Lord in obedience, trusting that he knows what he's doing. So I feel like there's so many other details we could cover. I don't want to go forever and belabor the point. Do you feel like there's anything that pertinent on there that we need to cover before we hand this to Miss Karen?
Love you to share the Ray Hughes word.
Please.
Because I feel like that's really connective.
Oh, I thought. Me shared. Okay.
You know it better than I do.
Yeah, so in October of 2019, Ray Hughes was here at the ramp, and in the back, he begins to prophesy over Miss Karen. And he says, this next year, there's going to be acceleration to the ramp's global assignment. And he said, when it happens, he said, you won't even do big sending services anymore because you'll be such a sending house. People will be going and coming constantly. And he said, what's going to happen is people are going to ascend into a place in the spirit where they're going to see their assignment in nations. And he said, it won't be like the old school days of the missionaries, though we honor that, of going and laboring for years and seeing little to no fruit. He said, we honor that, but that won't be what it is. Because people see their assignment in the spirit, they're going to go to those nations with authority, and things are going to immediately begin to change. He prophesies that over the house, and it reminds me of the word that Archbishop Ash prophesied years ago over this house, where he said, this house is an Antiochian model. It's like Antioch in the book of Acts. The church in Antioch was a sending church, and they just didn't send missionaries that they trained over here through a program. They sent their core leaders to go and pioneer works throughout the Mediterranean known world. And then those leaders would pioneer some stuff, come back and rejoin the teaching team. And then they would go and pioneer some stuff and come back to rejoin the teaching team. And that work in Antioch was led by a team of leaders that were constantly going and coming. And I remember I was having a bad attitude one day when Sam and Lauren first went to Cleveland, because I was like praying, because we just been praying Ekbalo stuff, and then God sends him to Cleveland. I'm like, Lord, what are you doing? And then he just spoke to me about Ekbalo. He's like, you've been praying Ekbalo. Who'd you think I was going to send?
So good.
You just want me to send people you don't know? Who'd you think I was going to send? I'm like, good point, I never thought of it like that. And so I feel like this is, again, not just a personal Micah and Delana update. Yeah. This is really an update about the global expansion of the ramp and what God's doing in Manchester. When we heard this about Manchester, we didn't know Manchester's about to expand to Sunday nights. That was not part of the discussion. And so there is a work to do in Manchester, but it's not just, and I want to be very clear about this, we're not going necessarily, we'll go and we'll serve, and obviously. But in many ways, it's not just Manchester needs us, we need Manchester. And I believe that this is also a statement about Manchester's role in the ramp's global assignment. Absolutely. That the Manchester itself is becoming, I believe, a global gateway to the nations. That as people are raised up here in Hamilton, they go through Manchester to receive their inheritance. Ms. Karen doesn't always talk about it, but there's a second letter she found regarding Manchester. And that second letter said, you are a Joshua that will send people to take lands. And it won't just be a couple that goes to Manchester. You will send families to Manchester. And when you do, it will unlock their spiritual inheritance. They will go to receive their spiritual inheritance. And so this is a big global story God's telling. We're just telling you a little bit of it. There's so much more, but we don't want to keep you here for hours.
Well, and two, it just reminds me of the first dream that Shiloh sent you in the two back in October. The first part, I love that you say on the platform, Manchester has changed all of us.
Yes.
So to me, this is not just a Micah and Delana thing, but it is something that is this house, and that it impacts and affects all of us. And I don't even think we fully understand what that is. So much of this, even in talking with Ms. Karen, is, so what exactly are we going to be doing? And how are we spending our time and all this? And so much, I mean, we have some general direction from the Lord, things that we know He's spoken to us in this prophetic journey. But at the same time, there's a lot of question marks still there about what that's going to be. And it's just this walk of trust and obedience with the Lord. And which I love it that way. I love that we never really graduate from that. You know, sometimes I like to think, oh, Lord, maybe the longer I serve you, it'll get easier and easier as I get more and more mature. And the reality is He just continues to ask you to trust Him, and it takes greater level of faith to step out in some of these things, you know. I feel like our faith has grown so much through the years, and here we are now, like, even with all these questions. And just to settle for you guys, are we excited to do this? Yes, because it's the word of the Lord, and it's always exciting to be a part of God's story. It's exciting to know that you are being obedient to the Lord. But this is not exciting on like a heart level, taking our 4 kids and all of the practical details of not even fully moving, but like we're still here, but then we're there and we're not fully going. So we just want you guys to feel too our hearts for you, and that this has been heart-wrenching for us. I can't go there right now. No, Sam.
I don't believe you do it. I need to see tears.
Do you know me at all? I'm an Enneagram 4. I cry all the time.
Let me, because if this gets emotional, it's going to get emotional. So let me hit practical stuff. So what does that mean practically for Ramp Church here in Hamilton? Well, over the last 5 years, we actually just crossed the 5-year mark of pastoring Ramp Church. And that was just last week. And so, during these 5 years, we have just seen an amazing administrative and pastoral team assembled within the world of Ramp Church. And that team is going to continue to lead the programs, lead the pastoral elements, so that way they continue to grow and increase. And so Jacob Peterson will continue his role as associate pastor, leading our admin team, leading our pastoral team, making sure that the families of Ramp Church are discipled, cared for, growing, that we're creating assimilation programs so that new people can get connected, and we're continuing to grow there. So we feel very excited there. The pulpit of Ramp Church is going to become a shared responsibility from our, again, amazing leadership team, our senior leadership team, working directly under Ms. Karen's direction and vision. Again, the Antioch model is that a team invested into the body. And you actually see in Antioch, though it began with Barnabas' oversight, and he goes and he gets Saul of Tarsus, who becomes Paul, he actually then gathers a team of voices that invest into that body, and it really makes a healthy body, because now the body's not receiving from 1 or 2 ministry gifts, the body's receiving from all 5-fold, and it's maturing the body for what? Ephesians 4, for the work of the ministry. And so, because you as saints, you're called to the work of the ministry, God's global story. And so the pulpit is going to become this robust, it always has been at the Ramp, but even more so, it's going to become a robust shared responsibility directly under Ms. Karen's direction and vision and oversight. Then, of course, within our admin and pastoral team, the Barnetts, Kevin and Pam Barnett, are wonderful care pastors. And so we really want to emphasize that role even more as they carry you, the congregation, in pastoral care and counseling and connection and concern and any other C I can think of. You know, I'm being silly there, but they really are here and present and available in that place of connection. So we have such a piece of the future of Ramp Church here in Hamilton. And we know that the Lord, when he speaks, he's mindful of every aspect of what it means to obey him. And so, so that's a little bit of our story. Miss Karen?
Can everybody just say, wow, what it is to follow the Lord, this journey, this amazing faith journey that all of us are on. And I don't know, I just feel like we're just getting started. This is how the Ramp was born, was hearing a voice and following it, however he wanted to lead. And this is the dream of God. That's what he said about Manchester. And not only for Manchester, but I believe there's nations that will be yet manifested to us and revealed in the years even to come. But it's just step by step, glory to glory, yes to yes. And so the first yes was moved back to Hamilton, and this baby was born, called the Ramp. He brought you here with your yes, and all of us collectively just heard a voice. And most of you in this room, it required you to pretty much sell everything you had and move to Hamilton to be part of something supernatural. Your family still thinks you're weird, all right? And but you know what? It's worth it all, isn't it? And so now, here God is establishing this base. And yet, I believe this home base here in Hamilton is going to be exactly what Delana and Micah just said. It's going to be a sending hub, that from this place we could touch the world. I remember in the earliest days of the Ramp when it was across the street. Y'all may remember this. Was it Pat Schatzline that came that night and preached? Remember that revival? Sam, were you there yet or not? No, you weren't. I can't remember. You were? When he prophesied about the fire on the mountain. And there was the fire on the mountain, and he said, I see embers that are coming up out of the fire, but then this wind is coming in and is blowing the embers, and you know, around the world is what he meant. And so I just see that. God has established a fire in this place, and he's going to let these embers rise. And you are one of those embers. I am. All of us are. And we just say, Lord, however you want to send us. I believe there will be people that will come here for a season, short season, and be sent. Then there'll be those that come here for longer seasons. Then there'll be some that come to Hamilton, and this will be your home for good. You're just going to help us manage this home base. But it's all of it. And we're just going to be excited for everybody. Amen? Y'all, this is what God is wanting to do. His heart is for the world. That he so loved the world. He loves people in every nation, every place. So we're going to have his heart. I was thinking when they were just now talking about the word that said, when you arrive to the place in Europe, you will meet a man who will help you plant not one ramp, but 2 ramps. What does that mean? I'm still listening. You know, I'm just curious. But that's what the word said to us. I say the word. I mean, it was just a rhema word to us. You will meet a man who will help you plant not 1 ramp, but 2 ramps, 2 places, 2 locations that will harvest double the size of an army of the young that will come with a loud shout. Come on. That will cause the enemy to flee from that land and others. When you arrive to the place in Europe, I will send you with double the finances and double the vision as I set my army up that will change that region for good. I will give you double for the trouble that has come to your house. Demand the people to pray double and to give double. I will make this dream come to pass. It was his word. It's his dream. All we've got to do is just say yes. So all of us say yes tonight, don't we? In a fresh way.